Hey guys, Lyra here. Today I thought I'd get back into reviewing and talk about a Pokemon movie I wasn't able to watch until recently, Volcanion and the Mechanical Marvel. I also wanted to review The Power of Us, but people around me were talking through the entire movie, so I want to rewatch it first. I also admittedly haven't seen I Choose You yet, and I'd like to review that too. At this point, maybe people don't think that they're relevant, but I still think it's fun to give my personal thoughts on things. Anyway, let's take a look at this movie. Honestly, it seemed to me like some of the more recent Pokemon movies were lackluster compared to previous movies, but this might be the first movie in a little bit to move me again. I wouldn't exactly say it's amazing, but there are some good points I'd like to highlight along with the bad. First of all, let's talk about the characters. Of course, there are our heroes Ash, Serena, Clement, and Bonnie, but this movie also features the two legendary Pokemon Magearna and Volcanion. The first to appear is Volcanion, and then Magearna is introduced shortly after. One of the good points of this movie is the progression in the character of Volcanion. While pretty much every other character seems to be more static and predictable, Volcanion goes through a large change throughout the movie that makes him very likable. Before watching this movie, I really disliked Volcanion and wasn't a huge fan of his design. However, after watching Volcanion grow throughout the movie, as well as seeing how cool he could be in certain action scenes, he really grew on me. He went from being stubborn and despising humans even after Ash and the gang tried to help him, to nearly sacrificing himself for the benefit of the Pokemon and the group, learning that not everyone was out to get him. This change in attitude really makes Volcanion great from a character stance. He may well be the most memorable part of the movie for the personality put into him. I really believe that character growth is what makes or breaks a character and truly earns Volcanion his spot as star of the movie. As far as Magearna goes, I didn't like the Pokemon much previous to the movie either, but also grew to like it for differing reasons from Volcanion. Magearna doesn't go through any large changes throughout the movie, consistently being very cute, loving, and thoughtful, but the concept of Magearna being her sweet Pokemon self in general is what made me fall for her. Volcanion and Magearna also share a sweet friendship that I enjoy seeing and really makes me ship the two. Moving on from the Pokemon, we're also introduced to three other main faces within the movie. First up is Raleigh. Honestly, I hated this kid from his introduction. His blue eyes looked so lifeless, and his naivety was frustrating. Rather than listening to his father and sister like most kids would, since those are his role models and the people who have his best interests at heart, he places his faith in Alva, a very obvious generic villain who certainly doesn't have as deep of ties to him. Raleigh's refusal to listen to the people around him for the sake of plot was just infuriating. There is no way anyone in their right mind wouldn't have understood that hurting Pokemon was wrong. Moving on from Raleigh, though, while Alva has a very obvious villain appearance and very typical goals, you know, destroying whatever he likes, gaining all the power that he can, whatever. What I did like, but still have complaints about, is his method of forcing Pokemon to Mega Evolve. It brought up a very important fight of whether or not a bond was truly necessary to bring out the best of the power in Pokemon. All the Pokemon seemed to be in pain and forcefully controlled, and our heroes showed the importance of ties to trainer and Pokemon that make amazing things happen. Any replication is not right or acceptable. I feel like this struggle between them was something very interesting, and it brought up this moral dilemma within the world of Pokemon that made things feel more realistic and very interesting to watch to see how it would play out. It does bother me though, because if they were going to make use of such an interesting concept as forcefully controlling Pokemon like this, and making them Mega Evolve despite them not having a bond with these Pokemon, then why just shove it into a movie and never touch on it again? There could be so much potential here. Honestly, if this had been something that they placed into the anime, I would have been extraordinarily interested. I want to see something like that. This real struggle between people. I think that it would make a really great villain concept if it was placed in more than just this movie with Alva, who just doesn't present himself very well. I don't know. I digress. Finally, as far as characters go, there was Kimia, the sister of Raleigh, and the voice of reason within the movie trying to show her little brother why trusting Alva was wrong, especially in the case of what he was doing to the Pokemon, such as Magearna. Um, just it still frustrates me how that kid couldn't understand that maybe Magearna should just be free. It's not like she was treasured by your ancestors or anything. And maybe him wanting to have Magearna is a bad idea, because then he just rips out her soul heart. But anyway, I really liked Kimia, admittedly. At first I thought that her design was a little weird, but then I kind of ended up liking it a bit. But admittedly, she only added so much to the movie. She just seemed to be more of a foil to her little brother and just a helper to lead the gang to where they needed to go. She didn't do a lot. She wasn't technically necessary, but I still enjoyed her. Then, as far as the scenery of the movie goes, I have to say that is something I really enjoyed. I loved the design of the Gear Town. It was really cool and had a nice old-timey feel that I really like. It was just my aesthetic. It was really great. And as far as the plot goes, it was somewhat interesting. It felt just about the same as any other Pokemon movie. There was Volcanion, who didn't trust humans, looking for Magearna, his pretty much only friend, besides all of the Pokemon that he protects in their little sanctuary area together. He wanted to help out Magearna, and there's not a ton to be said. There was the Mega Evolution of Pokemon without a bond by the enemies that they pretty much only used to be able to combat anyone who stood against them. And Alva wanted to steal Magearna's soul heart so that he could use her as a weapon and wreak havoc. Kind of bland, but also kind of interesting because I think that they actually did well with some of the emotional scenes, especially with Meowth being very upset over the pain of Magearna and everybody really feeling for Magearna in that moment. At least I really did. I felt a connection to Magearna and wanted her to turn out to be okay. So you know that a movie is pretty decent if they can at least give you some emotional attachment to the characters. Also, just like every other Pokemon movie, a near-death experience had to be added in order to make people gasp and wonder if it'll all work out for the good guys in the end. First, everyone was worried that Magearna wasn't going to live with her soul heart being extracted. She was in pain, crying out to Meowth, but eventually she wasn't talking anymore. They even put her heart back in, and she wasn't moving or doing anything. They always have to add in that little "oh no" moment that makes people wonder if the Pokemon are going to be okay. Even though, as every other movie has proven, they're just fine. And they didn't add just one of those moments in. They managed to force in two of those this time around. Well, at least it wasn't Ash almost dying again. This time, instead of Ash making a sacrifice, it was Volcanion, where he entered into the ship and was going to release his steam to blow up along with everything else. But it's a Pokemon movie, and I don't know if they can get away with the death of almost anything happening on screen. Probably not. This isn't the manga, after all. So, of course, Volcanion ends up being alright. He comes back wounded, but Magearna sort of takes care of that. So, of course, everything works out in the end, and Volcanion and Magearna are still really adorable together. Overall, the movie was very enjoyable, and I don't think it's the worst by any means. I would definitely recommend people to watch it. However, there are still things I'm scratching my head at after the movie. Was there a point to Volcanion and Ash getting linked together except for plot device and forcing Volcanion to develop? How did Ash manage to change clothes with the belt stuck around him? How did he get into an entire armor suit Clement made if the belt isn't supposed to be able to come off? His clothes seem so much bigger and like it stretched out the belt. So if it's able to stretch out like that, couldn't he take it off? I don't get it. And these small things actually made me pause the movie and question everything while I watched it. Anyway, despite some flaws, its cuteness factor at the very least makes it worth the watch for Pokemon fans. And so, I leave you with a recommendation to watch it if you haven't yet. And if you have, please give me your personal thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear. Anyway, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like, subscribe for more content, and I really hope to see you in another video. Bye!